Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Community Digital News, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, down here from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gents?
Starting the week right. Some boxing talk.
Indeed,
Yes, sir.
indeed. Starting the show early this time, actually on a Monday, with stuff fresh on the brain. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as a blog, discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to. P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com is the link. You check the right of the blog page, but you'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media, where to find it on all platforms that carry podcasts, as well as the where to donate. Let donation be the best nation. Got a PayPal and Cash Me donate link there. And also for those who may not know, coachforbeachbody.com, online health and fitness coach. Got a link to my coaching page there as well. Let's get things started. Usually, uh, we go. The format is we go with fight recaps and whatnot, and then news, and then previews. We're going to do fight recaps, but this particular recap also comes with an update. For those who do not know, Zab Judah, former junior welterweight champion, he fought this weekend um, in New York, in upstate New York. Fought a guy by the name of Cletus Selden. Lost in the 11th round. Didn't look good in the bout at all. Was stopped in the 11th round. Was hurt multiple times during the bout. Well, news broke Sunday that Judah had to be admitted to the hospital due to a hematoma, bleeding of the brain. Um, the reason we're starting that fight now is that we want to give an update on that situation. Well, positive news in terms of Zab Judah. He has been released from the hospital. He was speaking clearly with his family and friends after the fight, after the procedure with the hematoma, and fortunately, he's doing well. And again, he's been released from the hospital. Going to go to the panel here. Thoughts on the situation regarding Zab Judah? I mean, listen. Uh, Truth be told, he should not have been in the ring because he does not need to be fighting anymore. And another sad case of boxers uh, fighting too long, holding on too long, and unfortunately getting the fight literally beaten out of them. So uh, sad starting the show in a sad way. Discuss this, the situation regarding one Zab Judah. If anybody wants to speak first, please do.
A lot of times the boxers are, somewhat self-deluded about their abilities, and it's hard to blame them. They've had to believe in themselves when others didn't, in many cases from the very start of their career. They plow forward. The people I blame when something like this happens is the team around the athlete. They, in theory, should be looking out for a guy like Zab Judah's welfare and have an honest conversation with him about, buddy, your day is over. You have so many more risks now after all the fights you've been in at your age. There's a million reasons not to do it. Unfortunately, there are people in the fighter's camp relying on him for their income, and it's a shame that a trainer can't put the welfare of his athlete ahead of his own, financial gain. But we all know, you know, that ideal doesn't always get followed. That's when it's important to have other people, advisors, family, somebody speak some truth to these guys. At least give it a shot. Maybe they aren't going to listen. And then maybe you decide, you know what, I'm not going to aid and abet this guy and work with him if he isn't going to take care of himself. Because everybody around someone like Judah needs to now live with the consequences if they didn't stand up and say something, see something, say something. Well, I think it applies here too. It really does.
Your thoughts, Jacob and Daniel?
I mean, part of it is that I wish the sanctioning bodies or the medical staff would stop these fighters from going further. I know it's a hard thing to say, to stop someone's livelihood, in the sense of maybe that's how they make their money, and that's often the case with boxers, and why they go too long is that they get used to that lifestyle, and they have a lot of hanger honors, and you know a lot of people are depending on them, so they continue to fight until basically they become permanently damaged. So I wish they would do that, and maybe again, this is an opportunity for the boxing community to start to think about maybe what's life after boxing. Like if some way they can start to set up like a fund, like almost like a 401k for boxers, that takes a portion of their purse and puts it into an account so that they can have for retirement. I think that's something that they should look into for the sport, because boxing is such a brutal sport. But I mean, Zab had no business being in the ring. But again, these guys it's very often that they can't stop themselves. And you want to have the people around them that are telling them no. And then maybe there are some people, particularly maybe their close family, but a lot of times they're not going to listen, because that's all they know. So it's a rarity where somebody can transition to either training or promotions or opening up their own gym or car dealership or whatever, some other means to move on. But I think this is prevalent in a lot of sports. So hopefully he recovers, and kind of like how Adonis Stevenson has had a road back, and we'll see what happens.
Your thoughts in terms of 401k or protection for fighters? That all sounds great, Jacob, and I'll go to you, Daniel. The problem is that makes too much sense. It sounds too much like right, and because it sounds too much like right, it probably will not happen, not for the foreseeable future. One of the biggest pushbacks by the powers that be in boxing is that to do that may involve some intrusion, particularly via government, and the sport will shun that all day. Uh, and it hurts certain individuals who are the power brokers in the sport. Let's be honest about it. So while what Jacob is saying, it sounds perfectly reasonable, the application of that has been difficult because we've been talking about those issues for decades and nothing has come up of it from it.
It's sometimes a little bit more complicated than that, mainly because in order to have like something like a 401k, something the promoter would have to technically be an employer. And boxing is as mercenary as the sports you're going to get. Boxers are, in all sense of the words, the true meaning of what you look at when you see an independent contractor. Because while a promoter can get you fight dates, while a promoter can get you an opponent, you don't exactly have to follow it.
Right.
And that's what I mean. That's what makes it difficult in the financial sense to do it, unless it's done, interestingly enough, through the sanctioning bodies. They're probably the only ones that could probably do it. But it gets too messy, mainly because 3 out of the 4 major sanctioning bodies are not based in the U.S. The only one that's based in the U.S. is the IBF. WBC's in Mexico, WBO's in Puerto Rico, and WBA's in Panama.
And for the sanctioning bodies to do that, it will cost money. Do you think they're going to give up some of that money to do something like that when we all know how they love money, collecting 100% cut from sanctioning fees?
Exactly. And besides, you're also looking at the fact that we have to understand athletics is a young man's sport. And young people tend to not like to divvy up money for the future. They like to have that money right then and there. After, like, you have to pay the manager, the promoter, the trainers, and everything. Even though it makes much sense to do it. So that's going to be a hard thing to do. Now, the situation's going to be, though, in the case of Zab Judah, like Jacob mentioned, like, Zab Judah did have a job.
Yeah.
I think he was a CNA, a nursing assistant. So that's a pretty steady job that does offer 401k, that does offer at a lot of actually incentives that, like the one Jacob mentioned. Not to mention that a lot of times to be a CNA, to be a nurse, you have to be part of a union. So there's an avenue there, but the problem is there's also the fact that, like Jacob mentioned, like these guys really can't let go of this. You really can't let go of the entire situation as far as the high that a lot of fighters get when they walk into the ring, the high that people get when people call you champ, or the high that you get when you hear whoever's the ring announcer say your name. That's an emotional high that you cannot really replicate as much as you could try in a regular job. So I understand that that's in that aspect, but from what I've heard, because luckily I didn't watch the fight. I don't think it was broadcast. It was just happened, but it's just sad.
It was on some application called, I think, Fight TV, like FITE.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Fight TV. Okay. That's reasonable. But Fight TV is an app that mainly focuses a lot of MMA and pro wrestling. Like a lot of the Ring of Honor pay-per-views, a lot of probably the New Japan pay-per-views that are US based are normally on Fight TV. So yeah, they're a pretty decent platform. I'm not surprised by that. But either way, it's just a bad decision overall. Luckily, from what I've read, it wasn't a situation where they waited to the last minute. Zab's family, apparently, they went to the hospital out of their own volition, just as a precaution, and they were lucky enough they were able to find that hematoma. That probably takes into account, remember, Zab's obvious training in the medical field. So at least that's a blessing in that aspect, but it's about time. Like, it's at about time. Like, come on, Zab. Like, you have a good career waiting for you. You know it's steady. You know after 20 years, yeah, granted, it's 20 years, but you'll get tenure. You'll get a pension if you can. So it'll work.
Yeah. In hell, he'll get insurance on a consistent level, something he probably really didn't get in all the years of boxing. So we just wanted to give an update on the situation regarding Zab Judah. Thank God his family took initiative, took action, saw that he wasn't in the greatest of shape following the fight, took him to the hospital early, and they caught the situation with the hematoma in time. And from everyone here at the Pound for Pound Box Report, thoughts and prayers to the continued recovery of one Zab Judah. Let's get back to kind of a regular format, if you will, and start breaking down some fights even further. Start with, I guess, the biggest fight of the week, quote unquote, the most prominent fight of the week, excuse me. Triple G following the loss to Canelo, moving over to DAZN, fighting Steve Rolls over at MSG. He did what he had to do, got off a bit of a slow start. Rolls was able to land some shots here and there, but once Golovkin settled down to business, he did what he had to do. Hurt Rolls, eventually took him out with the left hand. I'll go to you, Jacob, and then you can follow up Gail and Daniel. Your thoughts on the fight? Did you get nothing from it? And I titled the show is Canelo and Triple G trilogy inevitable. Do you think it's all but a guarantee that a third fight will happen between these two?
To answer that question, no, I don't think it's inevitable. If more recently, Oscar De La Hoya was trolling, saying that, basically saying you need to fight a real opponent, and Canelo's your boss, and blah 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 blah. So I think
But
that
stop. The same Canelo that's sitting here refusing to refusing to give Charlo his deserved title shot. Sit down, Oscar.
well, we all know that Oscar's he's trolling. It's easy to hide behind that, but anyway, that's why I mean there's no doubt about it. I mean, Canelo's in control of his destiny in the sense that he's the A side, he's the money man. So I think he's gonna dictate on how it's gonna go down. But to just answer about the fight itself, I mean, I wasn't expecting too much from Rolls. He did have a really good second round, though. I actually gave him that round. But even in the aftermath of the post fight interview, Gennady even said that he doesn't really like. He kind of said this in broken English. This is how I transcribed it, but he doesn't like guys that move around too much. That's kind of hard for him. He what he does is he'll end up taking some shots or putting his guard down or letting them get off some punches so that they stand in front of him so that he can basically throw back and hit them. Which is Rolls, like I said, I thought he won that second round. But I don't think he was hurting Golovkin. And then Golovkin was able to, on the fourth round, hit him with that kind of like awkward punch where he comes like up over the top of the gloves and like downward motion to the top of the head, and that shook Rolls. And then when Rolls was kind of on the ropes, he clocked him again with another one of those punches, and he went face first, and it was over. So I mean, not. I'm impressed in the sense that when he's fighting this level of opposition, he's supposed to do that. He's supposed to blast him out, not carry him for 12 rounds, and then we start to see the doubts. But I actually think that Golovkin he's definitely past his prime. I think fighters like Andrade, or if Billy Joe Saunders would ever get his act together, I think the way that they box and their movement would give Golovkin some trouble. He needs somebody to basically stand there and trade with him, or give him an opportunity to land his shots, and then hopefully finish the fight. But if he's fighting like a mover or somebody that's going to box behind a really good jab and has good footwork, it's going to be hard for him to win. So, but I don't think he's going to stay at middleweight too long. I actually think that this fight was actually, I think, at 164 at catch weight. So I think he's eventually, if he doesn't get that Canelo fight, I think I could see him moving up to maybe 168.
You did coverage of this fight, Gail, for Communities Digital News. Took part of some pre-fight press conferences and news conferences. I posed the same question to you that I posed to Jacob. Not only your thoughts on the fight, but is it a virtual guarantee, that we will see Canelo and Triple G later on this year? I know after the fight, Golovkin was saying September, let's do it.
They want it. Come on, Golden Boy wants it. It's a matter of working out the numbers. I think even more than the numbers, which, come on, there's plenty of money to go around for everybody involved in this third fight. It's going to be haggling over the location. That, to me, is the linchpin of making this happen and really in my opinion, the only stumbling block to be negotiated. The Golovkin
Any
does
chance
not
you can?
want to
Any
go
chance?
to
Excuse
Vegas.
me. I was going to say any chance. Excuse me for interrupting. Any chance we can see this fight at MSG, or is it
Well,
headed to Vegas again?
yeah, the Golovkin camp wants to go back to the Garden. They can make plenty of money at the Garden. They can fill it up. It's friendlier territory. Golovkin considers it home turf. He really does. He's had 6 fights there. It's pretty amazing. You know, Canelo's camp, of course, would like to be at T-Mobile. And, you know, they're going to say, hey, we can't make enough money anywhere else, right? Which is ridiculous. However, you know, there's already discussion about an interesting compromise, which would be AT&T Stadium in Arlington/Dallas. You know, Jerry Jones would absolutely love to have this fight there. It's, you know, Mexican/Latino friendly. You could pack a shit ton of people in there. They've already had their dry run with the Spence Garcia fight. And by all accounts, it went really well. People were very, very pleased how it was produced. The media enjoyed it, felt very well treated there. In fact, some of the boxing media behind the scenes is already saying, oh my God, I hope we get to go back to Texas. Because they loved it. They had the red carpet was rolled out for them. You know, Vegas, they're kind of used to everybody. LA, to a certain extent, same. I think Madison Square Garden does a very good job putting on a show. I love it. I love covering fights there. So, you know, and it's the mystique of the venue, too. You can't deny that. So maybe if they absolutely cannot come to an agreement anywhere else, the default ends up being given Jerry a call. And LA could potentially be in play as well. And the truth is, you know, they could easily do a fight in LA. The crowd there is 50-50, although a slight edge, amazingly, to Golovkin in LA. The other outside chance, and I think very outside chance, although of course it's fun for people like us to talk about, is Azteca Stadium in Mexico City. And that would be quite the spectacle. It really would. But it'd be stupid for Golovkin to go down there.
Yeah, no. Mexico City, no. Just no. Your thoughts, Daniel?
Oh, where to begin? Where to begin? Where to begin? Yeah, we kind of knew this was going to happen. It's one of the reasons why you pick a guy like Steve Rolls to be your opponent on this. It was supposed to be what it was supposed to be. Now, like I said, I can give Triple G a pass a little bit at the, because I've like many of the people in the program know, and they're really good fans. My mantra is you have to get at least 3 fights in with a new trainer before you finally get down to the routine. This is first time with Jonathan Banks, so it's going to be a little bit rust here and there, and we have to mention even the fact that he even had some issues even with his wardrobe. We have to remember, like, he actually lost the original robe he was supposed to wear.
Yeah, basically used. Yeah, he used, from what I understand, one of the tailors that Anthony Joshua used for his outfits. He came in last minute and basically on the spot prepared an outfit for Triple G. Yeah, the trunks, I should say. Yeah.
Well, they whipped up all he lost was the robe. Apparently, they whipped up that robe real quickly. He was wearing all Jordan gear for his actual kit in the ring, and that was fine. That's a shame. You know, he has had that original robe since the Rubio fight. That's where it made its debut. That is really a shame. I wonder where the hell that thing is. You know, in Madison Square Garden, if it was taken from there, it's pretty secure. I'm thinking it might have been taken from the Fighter Hotel. And, you know, who the heck knows what weird stuff would happen in a hotel.
Well, it is
Oscar had it stolen.
Right. If Oscar shows up dancing on a bar somewhere and wearing that robe, we'll see.
Well, as far as like what this fight says, it doesn't really say anything. Like it it does feed into this mantra when you look at the people that Golovkin has knocked out compared to the two fighters that he wasn't able to knock out. They kind of tell you, okay, if it's a clear notch below Canelo and Danny Jacobs, he may have difficulty in getting them to knock out. If it's somebody like that, like Steve Rose, like Matthew Macklin, like Rubio, it's a little bit easier. But we all know this was a showcase. It was a chance for some of his fighters, including I forgot how to pronounce the guy's name in the co-main event, from his fighters to get some shine. And ultimately, yeah, all roads lead to September. I'll be honest, I think it would be in Texas. Because T-Mobile, okay, that's nice and neat, but T-Mobile is, you can only go there so much, especially when they actually have a hockey team there that's probably going to need their practice facility. And like I said, there's a little bit word going around that the NBA may be looking to expand. And interestingly enough, two of the cities that are likely candidates are Las Vegas and Mexico City. So I would probably say it's in Texas because it makes sense. You can put the most people in seats. You don't have to worry about other taxes. And Jacob mentioned, okay. Well, then I think the new Raiders Stadium is going to be open in 2020. So unless they want to do the rematch in 2020, then yeah. But at the moment, I probably would say AT&T Field because the only other place I would have said is LA, somewhere like Staples Center or the Forum. But it's probably going to be either Vegas or Texas.
Well, and in LA, to your point, very good call about, the idea of the new Raiders Stadium. I just don't think it's going to be ready soon enough. But the other one that's going up pretty quickly is the new Rams and Chargers Stadium, which is right in the back lot behind the Forum.
The rumor is though that the one in Vegas is it's actually on schedule and it's going to be done before the Rams Stadium. That's the rumor.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have been to Vegas now, a couple of times in the last 6 months, and that thing is going up so astonishingly quickly. I mean, it's really
Vegas is always like that. All their buildings, like you go there and then within 4 months, it's like completely different because they put that stuff up fast.
They got a lot of talent. They know what they're doing, and they do not screw around. So, I mean, it's doubtful, but it's enough in the realm of possibility for us to talk about it on this show. So, why not?
Well, that's a tricky part of it, though, because okay, who owns that stadium?
That's a
City of Las Vegas or no?
No. Let me check on that just to make sure we know what we are talking about. Let's see. It is a joint project of the Raiders, the soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders, so Al Davis, and the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. So
it's one of those private. Okay, so actually a private-public deal.
Yeah, exactly. Financed through. Actually, believe it or not, there's. The funding is split. 1.1 billion comes from the Raiders. 750 million is backed by Clark County bonds, and the Raiders' contribution is 2/3, believe it or not, a commercial loan from Bank of America, which is pretty crazy. So, That's going to be, yeah, it's interesting. And the rights, UNLV has rights to it because it's going to replace their Sam Boyd Stadium, which was the only other outdoor stadium out there. So, and they're already talking about it hosting 20 to 25 additional events per year outside of football. And that includes things like NCAA Final Four, US Sevens Rugby, Monster Jams, UFC, Pac-12, and boxing, and corporate shows and soccer. So, that's a whole lot of stuff. So let's see if they've given a completion date for this thing, estimated completion date.
Because from what I understand it, the Raiders are not meant to move there until 2020.
Right, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not. Okay, so completion date is expected to be August 2020, in time for it's a just in time for the NFL season. Now, if they are ahead of schedule, I don't think it'll make a huge amount of difference, but you'd be talking about delaying the fight a year, which
That's not going to happen. No.
No. That's just too long. So the next question is, is the Rams Chargers Stadium going to be finished?
Why couldn't it be delayed a year? The very first fight, when they were supposed to fight, that got delayed, and a lot of the rumors were it was because Golden Boy and Canelo wanted to wait till Triple G got a little older and a little bit past his prime, and then they made that fight. That fight could have been made earlier. So what's to say that they couldn't have done that? Do that again, because Canelo is getting paid. He has a deal. He's getting paid regardless of who he fights. He just has to fight, unless I haven't seen the contract, but unless it's in his contract that states he has to fight Triple G, which I don't think it's in that contract, then he really hopes the upper hand. And I think there's a lot of animosity there, and I think that almost like Marquez and Pacquiao, when Marquez knocked out Pacquiao, he didn't want to give Pacquiao another fight because it was definitive. He was like, okay, I won, I knocked you out. Those other fights were close. I'm not giving you another fight. It could be a similar situation. I think Canelo has a chip on his shoulder about Golovkin, and the fact that he was the one to beat him. I think that he can carry that, for a long time without having to, go down that road. I mean, he's getting paid regardless.
But there lies a problem. It's not so much the animosity gets paid either way. There's too many people who have a financial stake at this point to delay this fight even further.
Just like we were talking about with the Judas situation, you'd think people would be looking out for his best interests, but if their best financial interests are tied up with him, there you go. And we do have some of that going on. They're all supposed to be talking this week about this. And Tom Loeffler said at the post-fight news conference, which is easy to find online, that if they're going to do it, they need to get this deal done quickly so they can have enough promotional time to put into the fight. They really need about 8 to 10 weeks at minimum, and they'd like more than that if they can, so that they could fit in, a pretty extensive upfront media tour and get all the stuff done they need to get done before the guys go off to camp. So we're talking about coming up, in the next week or so, being 12 weeks out, 3 months out. They got to get it on.
Yeah, let's move on. Is there any other bouts on this card that you would like to talk about before we move on to recap other fights?
I will say Akhmedov, who was the co-main, was very impressive. He's a super middleweight. I don't think that we all should be looking for him to fight Callum Smith next week. Some of the announcers were a little overexcited about that, but he is darn good. I was particularly impressed with Brian Ceballo out of Puerto Rico. He put on an excellent fight. That was his first fight in the mainland United States. So he acquitted himself very well. That makes him, gosh, someone help me out. Is he 10-0 now? I'm trying to recall.
Oh, I can't recall his record right now.
But a super good debut for him at Madison Square Garden. He enjoyed it. And the one other fighter who kind of did what was expected was Israel Madrimov. Again, another one of the sort of under the auspices of Triple G Promotions, World of Boxing, the whole out of Southern California crowd, of which there are quite a few. And he's super impressive. And the way you remember him, he's been smart enough to put together a little trademark for the end of his fights. He does the Teofimo Lopez backflip. However, he can somehow pull off a round off into the backflip in the ring. You don't have a lot of lead time to do that. So, but Madrimov looked good too. He had a pretty quick fight against veteran Norberto Gonzalez, who we've all seen, I think, about 1 million times. Madrimov's from Uzbekistan. So, a nice little undercard for folks to get a look at.
Any other noteworthy bouts on the card that you want to talk about, Daniel and Jacob?
Nope.
No. I'm good.
Also, I will say super welterweight Charles Conwell out of Cleveland looked real good too. So all the A sides on the undercard did exactly what they were supposed to do in this fight.
Okay, let's move on to talk about one Oscar Valdez, who fought Jason Sanchez over on ESPN. I can't remember the locale. Valdez won. And
Reno. It was in Reno.
It was in Reno. And I'll start this conversation off with you, Gail. Okay, Valdez won, but I'm watching the fight, and first of all, before we get there, I want to say shout out to Unrivaled Boxing Talk, as well as Fink. They're listening live on the YouTube chat. Back to Oscar Valdez, Gail. I'm watching the fight, and okay, he won. He won by fairly comfortable 8-4 margin, but it's like I still felt very meh about the fight. There wasn't a thing in there that I saw that was like I was overly impressed by. He can still be hit. He's a good boxer, but I don't see anything really, really outstanding. He's a good fighter, but I'm watching this fight, Gail, and I'm like, in comparing him to the other champions, I still think he rates a level below.
I think you're inside my boxing head right now. I thought the same thing watching him. I kept saying to myself, Oscar, you're going to work way too hard to win this fight. Sanchez is taking you into deep water. He was never in any danger. But, by the time you're getting to the 8th, 9th round, that fight should have been over. And he did not impress me. You're right. He's got perfectly adequate skills. He does look good technically. He's perfectly sound. He's working with Eddie Reynoso, Canelo's trainer. But I'm seeing him plateau. There's just not a lot of progress going on. There doesn't seem to be the fire, the spark of brilliance, spotting those opportunities in the ring during the fight and taking advantage of them and executing. It just wasn't happening. Once again, the DAZN announcers drive me nuts sometimes. They made a lot of excuses about, Valdez, he had that broken jaw. He needs to be over that by now. If that's his problem, that is a problem. If that is psychologically making him protective, skittish, that's going to hurt him. And on the one hand, I understand that because he fought a brutal fight with Quigg, and half of it was after the jaw was broken. But on the other hand, he does need to get over that and move forward. It has been repaired. And there are fighters who are of a mindset that, hey, I made it through 6 rounds with a broken jaw. No biggie. I know what that's like. I didn't love it, but I survived it. He doesn't really have that attitude. So I'm a little concerned. I had the same concerns at a certain point with another of his top-ranked stablemates, Shakur Stevenson. But Stevenson seems to have recently passed through that plateau, that stall. Valdez needs to do the same thing.
I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you can follow up, Jacob. Do you share the pessimism that Gail and I have towards Valdez in the aftermath of this win?
Yeah, watching this fight, I didn't watch it live. I watched the zone card, but it was a situation where, he did too much work for something that should have been a lot easier. He had control of that fight throughout. The problem, though, is also he made, and some fighters, I said, this is one of the some issues when it comes to fighters when they get into trainers, they want to get in rounds to get the instructions in when they don't need to. And in a situation where he didn't need to. And like I said, it makes the fighter in the end look bad. And while we have to say it was ESPN, it wasn't the zone broadcasters, but it's still the same faulty reporting in that area. The situation is when you look at Valdez, it might be a combination of A, I'm hesitant because people broke my jaw, and B, from the sound of it, it's getting more difficult for me to make 126, for me to be a featherweight. Maybe it's time for me to go up to 130, where I may not have to work as hard. But the problem is Scott Craig broke his jaw. And there's a pretty decent amount of punchers at 130 that could probably do the same. The situation has to be, though, when it comes to Oscar Valdez, to not fall into what I would call the Felix Verdejo trap, where Verdejo pretty much did the same thing, where he had a lot of hype. He fought recent opponents. The only difference was he didn't become a champion, but he plateaued to a certain point where he's starting to try to rebuild to even get close to get back to the level of what he was before. Valdez right now is in danger of touching that area. And doing it while he still has a title, while he still has a belt. That's a pretty dangerous thing. So it's not so much pessimism, it's just cautious. It's being cautious about the situation because we know Valdez has the tools to overcome the situation. He has a pedigree to overcome the situation. The issue is, does he have the will at this point?
I'll go to you, Jacob. Your reaction to what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too impressed with Valdez in general. I mean, he did have a little bit more control and didn't really do or kind of get how do you say drawn into a dog fight, because he had gone through some pretty tough battles that he's had of recent, where I felt like it kind of took something out of him a little bit, and he wasn't the fighter that he was previously. But he does have he has good skills, but during that fight a couple times, Sanchez, who's tough as hell, man. I mean, I know he got knocked down, but he got hit with that left jab and that left hook. I don't know how many damn times, and he was actually coming on stronger. He actually started to change his strategy and coming out stronger. And actually, a couple times he put Valdez against the ropes and was kind of bullying him a little bit, and had his most success, I think, doing that. if he had done that a little bit earlier, maybe he could have caught Valdez and turned it into more of an ugly fight, which is what he needed to do. But yeah, Valdez is a strange one in the sense that I know he has a new trainer. It's their second fight. I do see some minor adjustments, but I don't know if those are necessarily good adjustments, I guess. I mean, I know he's getting hit maybe a little bit less, but he's kind of the fighter. I think that his style and what got him there, I think he is kind of a little bit of a brawler in that sense. So I don't know if somebody's gonna bring it out in him if he does fight. I think the talks of him fighting, I think it's Carl Frampton or someone like that next. Could be an interesting fight. Crossroads fight for Frampton, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I think he unfortunately he sustained a lot of damage in his recent fights, and that the jaw thing. I think that unfortunately messed him up more than maybe we know right now. So I wish he seems like a nice guy. I wish him the best. But he could be one of the weaker links in that division.
Is follow-up question, and you can answer as well, Gail and Daniel as well. Is Valdez a tweener? What I mean by that is, he can box, but not box well enough to avoid getting hit, particularly when it comes to the better fighters in the division. He can fight when he has to, but the problem is you can hurt him, you can put damage on him. Is he a tweener?
So does a tweener mean that, just basically how you described it?
Yeah, a guy who he may be able, he has skills, but not skilled enough where he makes the fight necessarily easy for him. He can fight, but you don't want to do that because, as we've seen in past fights, you can hurt him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely hurt him, and I think another part of him
It's
is
like
that
the equivalent of a basketball player who you don't know whether he's a small forward or a power forward. Um, or in football, you don't know whether he's a defensive end or outside linebacker, whether he's a cornerback or a safety.
I just think that unfortunately, I think he's going to run into somebody that's going to resort him to his old ways, that was going to put him in a position where he has to go back to his kind of brawling style, and then that's where it's going to be dangerous because he can be hurt.
Same question to you, Daniel and Gail.
I don't consider him a tweener, but he can become one. That's a dangerous part. He can easily become one because, unfortunately, you can tell he's having issues with making fights a lot harder than they need to be. But at the same time, on the other end, if he, like Jacob mentioned, if he goes back to a full brawl style, particularly if he moves up, that might be a dangerous thing to do, considering you have Conceal in the division now. You have, obviously, we know you have Machado, you have Burchell, you have punchers. So ultimately, that plays a factor into it, and it does make him try to be over defensive in ways. But like I said, he may be starting to fall into that Verdejo trap. And that Verdejo trap, unfortunately, like I said, he stopped really trying to improve. You had one fight that pretty much showed that he didn't improve, and it's pretty much was downhill from then on. Valdez is in danger of doing that. And like I said, it's even more dangerous when you're a champion. Verdejo at least had, if you can even call it, luxury of not being a champion when he did this. So he's now the story of a never was instead of a could have been. Valdez is a danger of being a could have been.
I'll go to you, Gail. Is he a tweener? I'll pose the same question to you. Is he a tweener, or is he just the case of a guy who really don't know himself, who really can't figure out a style that's conducive to him?
You know, I think we've touched on the truth in all these areas in some form or another. He is certainly going to have some problems going up in weight, and I'm sure he's thinking about how long can I hang out at 126 before I go up to 130? Because he's not exactly a knockout guy at 126. He's probably not going to be any better at 130. Now he's working with a different set of trainers who are looking for different things, who are probably experimenting a little bit with what's the best combination of your skill set to make you successful. I think what's hurting him in a way is thinking in the back of his mind he's this explosive Mexican style power puncher, and he's not. He never was. But the fight everyone talks about with Valdez, the fight he's remembered for, is that brawl with Quigg, where he was fighting to save himself. You know, he can't pull that out every time he gets into the ring. It's not going to happen. So here's the problem. You know, his mind is saying to him, I'm this guy. Everything else, including reality, is saying, no, you need to work on some of these other skills, work on your defense, work on your footwork, use your punch rate, if not your punching power. And maybe he is going to eventually just deliver a lot of fights like we saw on Saturday. And except against the very elite in his division, he'll win most of those fights. He certainly will. Will the fans love it? Nah, no, they won't. That's where the problem lies. So he's got to do some soul searching about his career. He wouldn't be the first person, to get stalled in his career at this point and have to decide, what's it going to be? How do you want it to go down? It's going to be his choice. And you're right. Going up to 130 is just fraught with danger for him. It is all of a sudden very, very competitive at the top of the pyramid. And depending on what happens with Cancio and Machado in their rematch a week from Friday, that could scare him even more.
Let's talk about some news here. There was reports early last week, prior to the recording of the last show, episode 254, that there was talks of possible unification bouts at 175 pounds, where particularly involving Sergey. There was talk of a light heavyweight World Boxing Super Series tournament, featuring all four of the champions, where Arum came out and basically said no, particularly when it comes to Sergey Kovalev. He said that's not happening. Well, turns out, while there may not be a World Boxing Super Series light heavyweight tournament, it looks like we may see some unification bouts, as Arum and Top Rank, news I heard today, he's interested in having a unification bout between one of his three champions, Kovalev. I can't remember the other two champions he holds right now. Kovalev, Gvozdyk, and who was the other champion he has at 175 pounds?
Turbiev.
Trying to make a unification bouts between one of those fighters towards the end of this year. We talked about this, I think, last week pre-show, that a light heavyweight World Boxing Super Series tournament would be fantastic. You just couldn't call it. Thoughts now in the aftermath, it looks like Arum Now that he has 3 of the 4 title lists at 100 at light heavyweight, he's trying to make unification bouts. I'll start the conversation with you, Daniel.
Well, that's the difficult part, especially when it comes into the situation of owning the platform. Right now, he didn't own the platform. The platform was the World Boxing Super Series. And because you don't own the World Boxing Super Series, it's hard for him to make money off of it. All the money goes to Saruman, in a way. So I can see himself like making the position, making ways for him to make the money off it. But then we have to run into the situation that leads out Dimitri Bivol. And if Bivol's team is serious about challenging the other top light heavyweights, this is the chance to do it. Because if they're all involved and he's left out in the lurch, then they start thinking about going down to super middleweight. So that is a very interesting tell when it comes to Arum. It's just mainly his way of saying, I'll do this unification, but it's going to be done on my terms. It's going to be done on ESPN's terms. But we have to remember, like, Bob Arum's only a co-promoter. He's still, I think, with Duva, as far as I know. I think he's still with Kathy Duva in a way. So part of it is her call. And if she has one client on ESPN and then another client on the zone, that complicates things.
Your thoughts, Gail?
Well, full disclosure to the listeners, I have at times been on the main event's payroll, but I haven't for quite a few months now as a contract worker. And not knowing what the current situation is, but disclosing my previous relationship. Kovalev's last fight was as the main event of a top rank card. So Duva provided the matchup with Kovalev through Arum, who she and her late husband Dan Duva worked with many times and have a very good working relationship. She provided the big main event, which in that case was the Kovalev-Alvarez rematch. And then Arum did the rest of the heavy lifting, put together the undercard, all of that. I don't see Duva holding this up for Kovalev, other than negotiation reasons. I don't see anything preventing it. I think that's the best way to put it. And Kovalev is the one that they'll really want to accommodate to make this truly worthy of the World Boxing Super Series in this division. They need him to really make it sing and really have a true unification, just like they've done so well in some of the other divisions, most notably cruiserweight, where sometimes previous stablemate of Kovalev's, Usyk, unified the division. Why wouldn't light heavyweights want to do that? We know that Bivol wants a unification fight as his next fight, for sure. Beterbiev, he'd be all about it. And he and Kovalev have wanted to tango for a long time. Once you have those three guys, adding to Gvozdyk, I don't think is going to be difficult at all. And then you add some of the other players in that universe, and you've got people like Oscar Rivas, you've got people like Marcus Brown. Hell, throw Badu Jack in there. You're going to have a bang-up tournament. And it has the potential where all the sum of all the parts, is going to make those guys some decent money, drive a lot of attention, like the cruiserweight tournament. You got to drive promotion on that through the semis, through the quarters and the semis for months, and all over the world. So I think it's more likely to happen than not. And how great for boxing fans. We deserve something like this. We really do. At the right time with all the right guys in place. Imagine that.
That's what makes it interesting. That is what makes it interesting to me. Like, you have the players that are available. The situation has to be, though, can they work it out right? Because obviously, I'm not saying it can happen, but in a year where we've seen some upsets happen, what if we wound up seeing Anthony Yard beat Kovalev in Russia? Suddenly, Frank Warren is not going to be probably not want to really play ball, even though he's working on ESPN. Maybe he wants to listen to his fellow European promoter, Saruman, and try to say, okay, if you want this belt, you have to come to the zone now, because we're going to do World Boxing Super Series. That's what's going to make it fun, interesting enough, because right now, Vostok, I don't think he doesn't have a mandatory that I know of right now. Kovalev, we know is going in. We know Kovalev is going to face Anthony Yard, but now it's going to be in August. Berturbiev just had his debut fight, and Bibble, like I said, is coming off beating Joe Smith.
Where does Zerto figure into the mix?
He could be one of the participants, like one of the people in the first round, but who would you want to put him against if you're Arum? Because all three of those guys that are currently under the ESPN umbrella are dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not truly sure Bob Arum wants to sacrifice Zordo to put this tournament on. And the truth is, there are so many good names that are established in the division. I'm not sure Bob needs to throw Zordo to the light heavyweight wolves.
I didn't hear your thoughts. Your thoughts on this, Jacob. I had to step out for a second.
Not much more to add. I mean, I would love for, again, the contenders or the belt holders to fight, each other in whatever format it is. But again, there's like everything in boxing, there's a lot of politics and promotional things that have to be ironed out. And it's a business, and everybody's got to make their little piece of the pie. And so, in one instance, it's good that Arum has control of so many of the belt holders, but we've seen this also with PBC, where they had a division where they had most, if not all, the best welterweights, and we didn't get to see a lot of the fights right away. There was a lot of kind of fluffer in between. So, I hope they're able to do something with that. But I mean, it's like everything, it's a wait and see, like until they announce the fight, until they get in the ring, it's, that's basically the only time you can actually believe it, unless it's what's that one guy's name, Harper, who was in the ring and then stepped out of the ring and left.
I saw your comment in the chat, Gail. You right. Watch out now. For those who don't know, reason the show started a little bit late, 30 minutes late, because I was cooking and I just had to step out and get around to what I cooked earlier this evening. So, yeah, I'm guilty as charged.
We're glad you're enjoying your delicious food that you made with your own two hands. I mean,
yeah.
we're just pointing out you're a man of many talents.
Well, then midst of all the talk about the Lofton's bout and the situation with Zab Judah and that unfortunate situation, and Valdez and his bout. What was a bit under the radar was the fact that this is Hall of Fame weekend for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. There were 8 new inductees, but I want to focus on 4 in particular. James Buddy McGirt, former junior welterweight champion. Donald Curry, former welterweight, junior middleweight champion. Julian the Hawk Jackson, former junior middleweight champion, as well as trainer, announcer, commentator, Teddy Atlas. McGirt may have stolen the show because he was so emotional. Cobra Curry may have had the funniest moment, where that infamous tweet of him dancing and he said this is his reaction to being inducted to the Hall of Fame. And then you had Hawk Jackson, renowned for his power, and then Teddy Atlas. Uh, um, I'll just open the floor to anybody who wants to respond. Your reaction to the International Boxing Hall of Fame and the 2019 inductees. Anyone?
There's oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I was about to sneeze. Sorry. No, go ahead, Jake. I was about to sneeze.
I was gonna say, I think it's a decent selection of fighters. McGirt got in not for training, for fighting, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I love Julian Jackson. I mean, the guy, you know, in his heyday, man, was was crazy. He used
I mean,
to knock
he's. I mean, the Hawk.
Oh.
One of the hardest punches in the history of the sport. He still to this day has, in my eye, the scariest one punch knockout I've ever seen. His one punch win over Harold Graham to win the middleweight title. He was losing the fight, backing up to the ropes, and then he just shot with a cannon of a right hand. Looked like he killed Graham. I mean, Graham spent a week in the hospital after the bout, all from that one punch.
Not only that though, but he's one of those guys that he knew, like, when he hit you, he it was over. He knew it was over. He just walked away because he knew when he landed, it was just like, it's spectacular. So, you know, I was glad to see him in, you know, McGirt's. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's crazy. They do this once a year, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, maybe the years are ticking by, but I feel like we just did it, you know, an induction into the Hall of Fame, but I guess it's that time of the year. But yeah, every year, I think there's a pretty good crop of fighters, and, you know, I know they do trainers, broadcasters, and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch the ceremony and everything, so I didn't get to see what they said, but, you know, I'm glad. I really like the Hawk, and so I'm glad he got in. And Buddy McGirt's a good guy, and so it's a pretty good class this year.
Your thoughts, Daniel and Gail?
Yeah, it was a very decent class. Obviously, we know the pedigree that Buddy McGirt brought it in. Is one of the reasons why it makes him as a trainer so good. How his career went. The Hawk, yeah. I think I need to watch that knockout again, because Jesus Christ, it's one of those knockouts where you think of when you picture like the Sergio Martinez knockout of Paul Williams, and you think that was a vicious knockout. I'm like, no, there's one that's worse. There's one that makes you think that you should ban the sport in a way, and that one was it. And as far as, like I said, Teddy Atlas goes, he's done a good job over the years, but it's become more of a mixed bag as the years have gone by, where it's become, in a way, kind of like Stephen A. Smith in a way, where it's less honest analysis and more hyperbole to get views or get clicks.
You think Teddy Atlas has fallen into the danger of being strictly a personality?
I've had that feeling a year ago. Yeah. To me, like, he can still do an honest assessment, but he'll fall into it time to time. And especially, like I said when I mentioned it, especially if you put him together with Stephen A. Smith, unfortunately. Because they'll just try to out-yell each other. But it was a good serviceable class. I do like what they were doing. And, well, Jacob, a lot of times what's happened is because this was the International, this was Casanata. I think last month, I think you had the Atlantic City Hall of Fame, New Jersey Hall of Fame, which
oh, okay, that makes more sense, because I was like, I feel like this just came around, and
yeah, and that one was headlined by Bernard Hopkins. So that one, yeah, and there's a lot of them. Like I said, we know the Las Vegas one is becoming more of a tradition, more of a marquee event. California does one, but I do it pretty low key. New York does it, but New York is very, very low key. They don't really try to advertise it.
The other one that you're probably thinking of, which has its induction ceremonies in August, but just announced a month or two ago, is the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah. That's another
That
one.
that one is very well attended, as you can imagine, being in Las Vegas. And they're
Don't they
doing,
do like a fighter meeting week that same
um,
week too in Nevada, or
sometimes we
Expo
do,
or something?
I
yeah,
thought that was the one in May with the boxing writers.
yeah, the one for the actual Nevada Hall of Fame's in August. That's the weekend of August 9th and 10th. I don't know if there's a card scheduled. Usually, I mean, there's always something going on, but they're doing a lot of catch up. You know, they've only, this is only their 7th year of inductees. So their list is Bernard Hopkins, Juan Manuel Marquez, Winky Wright, Humberto Gonzalez, Vinny Paz, Terry Norris, Bobby Chacon, Joel Casamayor, Wayne McCulloch, Hasim Rockman, Leroy Haley, Floyd Mayweather Sr., Dwayne Ford, Dan Goosen, and Mark Risman. So, you know, they're really loading up to get everyone in there, and you know, no arguments with that group of names.
Yeah, in terms of what Daniel was saying about the Hawk, I'll co-sign that, and you can find that knockout of Harold Bob McGrath on YouTube. It's on multiple channels. You can't help but if you miss it, then you're just not really looking. And the thing that made it more scary was I think Jackson was fighting with one eye at the time that he knocked out Harold Graham. One of his eyes was closed. So yeah, the Hawk, he had dynamite in his fist. What he did to Graham, what he did to Terry Norris, um, the previous year in '89. The only fighter I can think of who really genuinely hurt
Like
Mike
Lennon?
McCallum, who
Yeah,
had an iron chin. So
that was a crazy fight.
yeah, when he fought McCallum in '86 in Miami, uh, Jackson lost, but yeah, he made his mark, particularly in the first round of that bout. So uh, Hawk Jackson had TNT in his fist, no doubt about it. And Buddy McGirt, he was a product of. He was a really good fighter who fought in a really great era. What I mean is, he won the world title. He lost it to Meldrick Taylor. Uh, he was hampered in that fight because of a busted eardrum, but he fought in a great era in which he fought in the same at the same time of a prime Meldrick Taylor, a still prime Julio Cesar Chavez, and a prime Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. And he lost the and his two most famous losses were to Taylor in '88 and Whitaker in '93, in which he fought that fight with a badly damaged shoulder, in which he had to have surgery and was off for a year. So yeah, he was just product of bad luck in terms of injury bug, and he fought in a great era. And so yeah, he outside of
Did we lose you?
McGirt Buddy McGirt was a heck of many people thought of him. Yeah, up until the loss of did you guys can you still hear me?
You cut off a little bit.
Now I can. Yeah, now I can.
Okay, I'll just repeat myself. When it came to Buddy McGirt, he was he was a really good fighter who was a product of one being bitten by the injury bug, losing the fight to Meldrick Taylor, the junior welterweight title, in part due to a busted eardrum, and he lost the welterweight title to Pernell Whitaker, in large part because of a badly damaged shoulder. Um, and when it came to the Cobra, Curry, up until the shocking loss of Hunnigan, many people were there was some who were hailing him as the best pound for pound fighter in the world. He won the welterweight title young, early in his career. He annihilated Milton McCrory to unify the belt. Uh, there was speculation that he was going to move up to fight Hagler. There was speculation that he was wanting a fight with Ray Leonard. At his best, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but the Cobra was a fantastic fighter. Could box, could punch, could fight on the front foot and the back foot.
Yep.
After the Hunnigan fight, he was just, unfortunately, he was never the same. He won the junior middleweight title. He was beating McCallum until he got knocked out. But something about that Hunnigan fight, just from a mental standpoint, in his career kind of derailed. And he never was the fighter pre-Hunnigan. He was never the fighter post-Hunnigan that he was pre-Lord Hunnigan. Let's move on to preview some fights here. Headline fight, of course, is Tyson Fury coming back after the draw with Deontay Wilder, a fight I felt that Fury won. I still feel that outside of the knockdowns that Tyson Fury pretty much controlled that fight. He's fighting Tom Schwarz. Gail, you took part in a conference call with Fury and Bob Arum and Schwarz earlier today. Could you give a recap on that presser, as well as your thoughts on the upcoming fight this weekend?
Will do. Schwarz was the first person appearing in the conference call. He did do all of his interview in German, translated. He seemed to be a man of very few words. He answered in 1 or 2 word sentences where he could get away with it. But he did loosen up a little bit near the end. One of the comments he made during the call was saying that he was asked to talk a little bit about his career and how he'd come up with the ranks and how he'd come up through the ranks. And he said, I was born for boxing. And his big target since the day he started was always to be a world champion, the only thing on his mind. He said that he didn't care about rumors about other opponents because, pardon me, let me clarify that. He did not care who the rumors about other proposed opponents were. He says, I am the opponent, the rumors don't matter. I'm the guy, I'm the real guy. He was asked the inevitable question about Andy Ruiz Jr. We knew that was coming, and he said he did see that fight. He found it was great motivation to see a good fighter with skills and who had big balls can win. That's when he finally started loosening up a little bit. And he said that he was asked about the great German heavyweight Max Schmeling. That was among the more interesting and thoughtful questions he was asked. Schwarz said when Schmeling won his championship 83 years ago, that was a big surprise, and he sees himself doing the same thing. He also played with the media just a little bit about being asked to pronounce his name properly. Schwarz is German for black, the color black, the literal translation. So when he was asked, how do you pronounce your name? He said, black, which I thought was quite funny. And he was then also asked, who's your favorite fighter? And he said, Conor McGregor. I don't know. I really couldn't tell if he was trolling or not.
McGregor? Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He said it as clear as a bell, and we all kind of thought, huh? Really? Are you trolling or are you on the level? Who knows? With this, we were waiting for Tyson Fury to come on the phone, and he was late. So Bob Arum's taking calls and talked about Schwarz and said, hey, I get it. American sports writers are saying, who is this guy? But he pointed out that he was fairly highly ranked by the various sanctioning organizations, and he was a legitimate opponent. With this, Fury bursts in on the call and says, Oh, sorry, Bob. I just got in from a night out. And it was 9 a.m. Pacific time, a little after. Well, actually, it was about at that point about 9:40 Pacific time, 12:40 on the East Coast. So there was a pause, considering whether or not Tyson Fury really had been out all night and was just now getting in at 9:40 in the morning. I doubt it, but it signaled his tone for the rest of the call. He was very animated, very lit up. He ripped on some of the media for stupid questions. He was asked, for example, if he looks at video of boxers, his opponents, to prepare. His response was, "Do you think I look at video of boxers? Please. I figure it out during the fight. Within 5 seconds, I'll know what to do." So that was the tone. Then he was asked if he has any trouble getting motivated when he's facing an unknown, unranked opponent like Schwarz. And he said, when you're getting paid as much as I am, which Bob will tell you, motivation is easy. This is going to be epic. This is the Tyson Fury show. So you get the picture. He wants to entertain. He wants people to tune in. He wants to make his handlers, his new promoter happy. But in all seriousness, if you've seen video of Fury, if you've seen interviews, he's absolutely in great shape. He is taking it seriously. He may talk a good game. He may fool around. I mean, that's always been his nature. He is a big personality with a big mouth and a big vocabulary. He's very witty. He's fast on the quips and the comebacks. But he wouldn't have worked himself into such good shape. He wouldn't have worked that hard if he didn't want to make a big, stunning impression. Yeah, we're all going to say it's Tom Schwarz. I get it. Just like everyone said, yeah, it's Steve Rolls last weekend. But the fact is, these guys on the A side, when they are so heavily favored, have to perform when required. And Golovkin did, and I'm sure Fury will as well. And he wants to see his fortune laid out in front of him. He really is the one in command of the heavyweight division right now. He is the pivot point at which all the other fighters are circling, and they will continue to do so, assuming he wins a quick knockout or in high style this weekend, which I'm sure he will.
Before we continue on with the preview of Fury and Schwarz, I want you guys to respond to a question that was asked in the live YouTube chat by Fink. He, in our discussion about Oscar Valdez, Fink asked, would Top Rank consider a fight between Valdez and Shakur Stevenson? And I want to pass that question on to you guys here on the panel. Do you think Top Rank would put the young, precocious Shakur in there with Valdez?
I would say no. I would say not yet.
I don't think so either.
What say you, Gail?
Sorry about that, Mike. I'll make that 3 of us. I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think that's sort of a self-evident answer.
Okay, with that being said, let's go back to the conversation about Fury and Schwarz, and I'll pick it back up once again with you, Jacob. Your thoughts?
Again, I'm not the biggest Tyson Fury fan. But I mean, he should win this fight. But what I will say, because this is heavyweight boxing, and I don't know too much about Schwarz. All I've heard is that he has a pretty good right hand. He's a big dude, and we know in the heavyweight division that one punch can change a fight. And how people were giving Joshua shit for his demeanor leading up to the Ruiz fight and what ended up happening after, Tyson Fury, I know that's his nature to screw around and whatever, but sometimes that can catch up with you. You can be in the best shape of your life, like, you know, Anthony Joshua was. But, you know, again, you get hit in the right spot at the right time by somebody that's motivated to win, that could change things. So, you know, a lot has happened within the heavyweight division in, you know, in the last few years here. So, since the end of the Klitschko era. So, you know, I if I was him, I'd be careful. You know, I know he rose from the dead against Wilder, but he didn't get hit with the right hand, the power hand. He got hit with I believe it was a left, that put him down, and you know he nearly didn't beat that count too. So I mean, you know, he's got to be. I think he has to be mindful and respect his opponent, and you know, be serious. But I know that's kind of the way he is. But you know, I don't know. Sometimes these guys get a wake up call when they're looking up at the lights. But I think Fury will probably win.
I want to note something that Gail said within her breakdown. She talked about uh, how Fury is looking in fantastic shape, and I want to focus on that for a quick second. See, for me, when I look at this, because of what went down with Ruiz and Joshua, and during this comeback, I think there's a moment, a level of clarity when it comes to Tyson Fury. I think from a mental perspective, because of what he's went through, I think he's come back stronger from that aspect. Um, the physical shape, the fact that he was back in the gym so soon following the Wilder bout. Um, I just think from a mental and physical standpoint, and I'll go to you, Daniel. I just think, in spite of the antics of uh, Fury, and I too, like Jacob, have been critical of Tyson Fury in the past, and some of the things he has said and done. But I just think that this version of Fury right now, he's on it from that perspective. He know what he has to do. He has a focus. He has a plan. He has a goal, and I think he's not going to be, in his mind, he feels he's not going to be denied until he reaches those goals. Um, he know he has to do from a mental and physical perspective against Schwarz. All that stuff about, well, he'll just find out once he gets in the ring. I'm not buying that. I think he's done some film study of Schwarz, and I think he's going to be ready to go. Will he knock Schwarz out? No, I don't think so, because Fury's never been a puncher, in spite of his size. But the skill level is high, Daniel. The style is unique. Um, you can't take that away from him. For a big man, he does some unusual things in there. He does some things in there as a big man that you don't see from small, quote unquote, more agile heavyweights. And at the end of the day, I personally think Fury is going to do what he has to do, and he's going to be impressive doing it. Schwarz is not ready for this type of competition. I don't think Schwarz is ready for what Fury presents him, because of his unique style, because of his athleticism as a big man, and because of his outright intelligence.
There are not many fighters that are ready for a style like Tyson Fury's. That's the key part of it. And what is very true in a way, like he does seem in a much better mental place than when he was a year ago or even a year and a half ago. The main situation you need to focus on is a lot of times you can actually, like I said, you look too far ahead, because obviously we know the rumors that supposedly the deal's already signed for the rematch with Wilder in 2020. So that's something you definitely need to look into. That's definitely something that could be ahead in this game, because we have to remember Fury kind of signed a top rank deal without actually looking at the contract. And when he looked at the contract, he saw like, oh, I need to make money. I need to make the big money. And the only way to do it is if I fight top 3 heavyweights or Wilder. So he may start looking ahead. But from what I've seen of Schwarz, from what I've heard of Schwarz, he's at his best a European level fighter. Like I said, this is a gigantic step up for him. The guy who regained Ring Magazine's #1 ranking for among heavyweights. So it should be a pretty decent fight for Fury. It'll shake up some of the cobwebs from the Wilder fight, and then we'll see if we hear an announcement for early 2020. Because we know Wilder has something to take care of when it comes to Ortiz, but we know the rumors are flying now.
Indeed. Want to go to some undercard bouts here. One undercard bout in particular, and Fink asked about this fight in the chat. Sullivan Barrera, perennial guy at 175 pounds. He's fighting Jesse Hart. Hart fought Zurdo Ramirez twice at 68. He's moving up to 175 pounds right now. I'll go to you, Jacob. Barrera, he's up there in age, but I look at Jesse Hart. Yeah, he's stepping up to 175 pounds, and he's younger and all that. But based on what I've seen from the two fights against Zurdo Ramirez, there's something missing there with him, and I don't think I don't think he'll find it at 175 pounds. And truth be told, I honestly don't think he'll find it. That missing aspect to him against Sullivan Barrera. I think Barrera's going to give him a heck of a fight. Your thoughts, Jacob?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Hart had his first fight with Zurdo was, started off really bad, but then he kind of had a little bit more of a comeback round. But his second fight with him in the rematch, he was kind of like, he was very inactive, and he didn't seem to take the initiative to, capitalize on the things that he did in the first fight. So with Barrera, I mean, he's had a couple of tough losses. Most notably against Bivol was, I think, the only thing was Bivol that stopped him. And in recent fights, he's hit the canvas, I think, multiple times. Against Ward, against what's that one guy's name? Fuck, I can't remember. I think another Polish guy or something. He ended up beating, but and then against Smith. So I mean, he is older, and he's kind of like more of the measuring stick, I think, for a contender. He's kind of just that guy that's like right in between, a champion and someone that's like gonna contend. So I expect him to win this fight as long as he plays it smart. But I think he'll win it pretty easily.
If you're back, Gail, I think you have to step out. Your thoughts on this bout between Sullivan Barrera and Jesse Hart?
Sorry, guys, I am back. I'm back. Yeah, this is one of those fights where somebody's career, in theory, should move forward, and another guy's career should end. And Barrera has made the most of his career so far, but I think he's on the, his career is fewer days in front of him than it does behind, and the trajectory is not exactly to the positive. And it seems like, to me, and I don't know if this is true for any of the rest of the panel, that we've seen him in a whole lot more than 24 professional fights. Doesn't it seem like he should be like 40-5 by now? But he's 22-2. So, but he had that, he had that win over Shawnee Monahan, in November, and I think those cards were far too wide. You look at the scores, having not seen the fight, and you'd think it was a blowout, and it was not at all a blowout. Winning a decision over Felix Valero before that, which was a year before that. I mean, both fighters were down in that fight. He had a very solid effort against Joe Smith Jr. But before that, you know, since that time he fought Joe Smith, I think he's struggling. Whether Jesse Hart's in the right place, he's younger. You know, he's got that razor thin card against Ramirez. I just think it hurts to lose. I really do. And it's a good launching pad for him to win against the name of the caliber of Barrera.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts?
To me, it's going to be an interesting fight because Jesse Hart has shown that he has a good amount of metal in those two fights with Zurdo. Sullivan Barrera, though, to me is going to be a lot more motivated because in all way, shape, form, this is pretty much his last chance to make a significant push and even be considered at this stage a fringe contender for any of the four belt holders of light heavyweight. And Barrera has shown flashes where he's getting close, but it doesn't quite make it. He doesn't quite, quote unquote, grab the brass ring. And with that, with Jesse Hart, like I said, feeling like he beat Zurdo the second fight, it's going to be very tough. But I think I have a feeling that Barrera's skill set, that Cuban school of teaching, not to mention the fact that he can, what he wants to, start punching, start becoming a puncher. I think it'll be Barrera by this stage, but it's a good fight for Jesse Hart. It's a good measuring stick at light heavyweight for him.
Another fight I want to talk about. This will be the final fight before we start to shut the show down this week. Fight has taken place over in England, Leeds, England, to be specific, as Josh Warrington, who we talked a lot about over the past year. Very impressive win over Lee Selby to win the featherweight title. Dominant win over former junior featherweight and featherweight champion Frampton, and his first title defense. He's coming back to the ring to fight Kid Galahad. This fight can be seen, by the way, on ESPN Plus, excuse me, for those in the States, while the Fury card, Fury, Schwarz, and Sullivan Barrera Hart bout can be seen on ESPN. I'm going to you, Gail, and I'm going with Warrington in this fight. I'm very impressed by what I've seen of him. He's physically very strong, but he's not just a outright brute. Quick hands, quick feet. His style is a little bit unique for me. I see as unique. And for me, I would have thought more about Galahad, Gale, prior to the suspension. Prior to his 2-year suspension, I thought Galahad was really on the come up. I thought a lot of him, but in the fights after the suspension, I think the momentum has stalled. While Warrington has progressively been getting better and better and better and better and better with each fight. Am I wrong thinking here that for Galahad, it's a case of too late?
Yeah, I agree. I think the clock has ticked on him. I think we've figured out that he's a lot more about the flash than more about the style than the substance.
Plus, I don't think it can hurt Warrington.
Well, clearly. And, he's certainly entertained in the ring. And, if you look at the record and you think, well, he's got, 15 knockouts among his fights, that he poses a threat? No, he does not pose a threat. He, I think is going, it's funny to talk about a guy at this level with no losses, 26 wins, being exposed. I think he's going to be exposed. And especially for guys who do a lot of their fights solely in the British Isles, it's really not the best test of where they stand against the rest of the world. There's so many guys in the professional ranks. You can see the air quotes I'm putting up right now. You can spend your entire career in the UK, do just fine, make enough money, have a fight every couple of months. But he's only had one fight outside of Great Britain. It was this fight last year against Clary in Boston. He may have given some folks some entertainment and had a good time, but he hasn't beaten a lot of world beaters. And now here we got Warrington in front of him. And I think we're going to see him collapse quickly. I really do.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on this fight? Is it a case of, as I try to state, that it just may be too late for Galahad right now? The timing just bad for him, and Warrington has just come on so much over the past 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, that he's just going to be too much for Galahad, who can box and can fight. But as I was saying to Gail, I just don't think he's physical enough, strong enough, has enough power to hurt him. And if you can't find the ability to hurt Josh Warrington, you were in for a tough one.
I think Warrington's gonna beat the brakes off of Galahad. Warrington is just a force of nature. He will outwork you. He's done a lot to really raise his stock, in my opinion. A lot of people, including myself, had kind of written him off in the sense that they didn't think that he had the goods, but this guy has the goods, and he's a hard worker. He's a tough guy. He has an endless gas tank, and he's gonna put it on Galahad. And I think Galahad's gonna, I think Gail just said, I think he's gonna crumble. I think he's gonna know that he's in there with one of the best featherweights right now. Again, I'll say it again, but my dream fight, if they can make it, is Warrington versus Leo Santa Cruz. I just think that would be a crazy all-action fight that would, do a lot for boxing.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
What's the question again? I'm sorry, I stepped off for a minute.
We're doing a preview of Warrington and Galahad. Your thoughts on that fight?
I haven't thought much highly of Kid Galahad. A little bit, mainly because of the age he is getting up there. It's not as bad as Terry Flanagan, mind you. But he has a little bit there where maybe a little bit too late. And you can't do that with somebody like Warrington, who's coming off a championship victory in his hometown, like one of the biggest upsets against, like I said, a countryman, and now you're fighting a fellow countryman. Warrington's going to be motivated because he knows the big money's coming if he wins. I have a feeling that Warrington will shell it out and work it out, and you might see a highlight knockout in Leeds.
So you think he's going to win? You don't think he's going to stop Galahad?
Oh no, I think he'll stop Kid Galahad. Yeah.
He could, but again, I just think he's too strong, too physical, too active for the likes of Galahad. Who Galahad could have, if he had legit power. Okay, I'd give him more of a shot. But no, I'm going with I'm agreeing with everybody here. I'm going with Josh Warrington to win this bout. I'm gonna be safe about it and say the decision, but I would not be surprised if he ends up stopping Galahad. Besides, he got the mental advantage over Galahad, given some of the post-fight press conferences and how he made Galahad jump when he faked like he was going to go at him and whatever. So he got him in the head, and I just think physically he will be too much for him as well. I think we're going to let me check the Twitter, let me check the YouTube in case there's any comments. Any more comments? No, those are all the comments in terms of the commentary there. I want to thank Fink. I want to thank Unrivaled Boxing Talk for joining us tonight on the show. Again, if you like what you heard, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, subscribe to us on iTunes, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on Spotify. I'm going to go around the panel here, starting with you, Gail, for those who want to talk to sweet science. Let the folks, those who want to talk to sweet science, for those who want to talk Game of Thrones, for those who want to talk small business advice, for those who want to talk media, what it takes to be successful in media. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find my regular column at Communities Digital News, which is COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. I am about to post up a interview with Sinisa Estrada, who will be the main event this Thursday night, Golden Boy Fight Nights in Los Angeles. Great local card. Crazy A. Hovhannissian is also on that card, along with a couple of other prospects. David Maharis, local LA prospect that's undefeated, is also on that card. Well worth seeing. And let me add, in parting, one little announcement. Murat Gassiev will make his heavyweight debut on the Hooker Ramirez undercard in Arlington, Dallas, against Joey Dewelko. And that is a DAZN Sky Sports card as well.
And Dewelko being the guy rumored to have knocked out Anthony Joshua in the lead up to the fight with Ruiz. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's Sinisa Estrada fight. You can see that this coming Thursday on Ring TV, right?
I believe it is. Take a look at Ring TV, but you can see it on Facebook Watch, the Golden Boys Facebook Watch page. It is being picked up by some regional TV networks around the country, but it's a sure thing for free on Facebook Watch. And the production, I will add, I got to give props to Golden Boy. The production quality on their Facebook Watch fights is every bit the equal of any of their televised fights. They're quite good. And hey, it's Thursday Night Fights. What's not to love?
And again, check out for that Sinisa Estrada as well as the Garcia bout on the undercard of the unification bout between Ramirez and Maurice Hooker. I'll go to you, Jacob, for those who want to talk the sweet science or movies, because you also appear from time to time on the Wrong Real Movie podcast. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Shout out to Bo, Gus, and For Boxing News people, and McGregor, who joined us last week. So it was nice to have some fresh blood in the water. But you can find me on Twitter, JRATM23. You want to talk movies? You want to talk boxing? That's where I do all my social stuff.
And I'll go to you last, but certainly not least, Daniel. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA. Speaking of the NBA, we're doing this live show on the night of Game 5 between Toronto and Golden State, and it looks like Kawhi Leonard is finally waking up. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially the Miami Heat, Daniel, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me, folks, on Twitter, Rocks99. You can find the show, as always, in Jesus Christ. No, that wasn't Van Vliet. Okay. No, that was Kawhi. Okay, Jesus Christ. Yeah. But you can find me, like I said, also we do a show during the week with the folks at ForBoxingNews.com. And like I said, Joe and Francis. And like I said, I'll say my on there, once again, condolences. Francis's dog. Unfortunately, she had a dog for 13 years. It just passed away. And like I said, but definitely because the fight's going to next week. I would not be surprised if we talk some craziness with Fury again by next time we talk.
Indeed. And Kawhi effing Leonard, looks like he's wanting to say, Golden State, you've had a good run, but it's my time. Watching this game. For those, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk music, for those who want to talk fitness, you know what it is. You can find me on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76, as I said to begin the show. If you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. You check the right of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find us on social media, where to find us on all platforms that carries podcasts. Where you can donate, and the fitness page. Let's Build Together Fitness Challenge starting July 1st. Going to share some stuff on Instagram and Facebook as soon as this live show is over with. So yeah, if you're interested, some interesting and fun challenges. Like I said, Daniel and Gail, even you too, Jacob, or anybody else listening, get up on that. I got some programs for men, for women, that I think will do you good. You can check out the link to my health and fitness, my health and wellness fitness page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Right below the links to where you can find us on social media and whatnot. So you're into fitness, if you fitness, nutrition, tips, and anything of the like, hit me up there. On the next episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, we will do a recap, of Fury and Schwarz, a recap of Sullivan, Barrera, and Jesse Hart, a recap of Josh Warrington and Kid Galahad. We may talk cruiserweights because there's a World Boxing Super Series semifinals of the cruiserweight tournament there. Bridas and Golovkin, Dorticos and Tabiti. So we may find some time to recap those bouts. We didn't talk about it here. Apologies for that. And we will do a preview of low-key good card that's taking place on the 19th in Japan. You can find it on UFC Fight Pass for those here in the States. Ashton Palikte is going to be fighting Kazuta Ioka for the vacant super flyweight title. Really good junior flyweight by the name of Koiguchi. He's going to be fighting on the undercard as well. If you hadn't seen Koiguchi, do yourself a favor and check him out on the undercard of Palikte and Ioka. And rematch of one of the upsets of the year, Sancio Machado 2, that's going to take place on the 21st in India. Will you be in attendance again, Gail?
I'm sorry. Repeat the card again.
The Sancio Machado rematch. Will you be in attendance again, Gail?
The Concio fight, yes, and I absolutely will. In fact, we are going to speak to Concio tomorrow on a media call, so we'll have the full preview.
Yeah, so that rematch will take place in the same venue as the first fight, Indio, California, on June 21st. We will do a preview of that bout. Angel Acosta, one of the hardest hitting fighters in the world, he will be defending his junior flyweight title on that undercard. So, yeah, we would talk about all of those bouts. So for Fink in the live YouTube chat, for our Rival Boxing Talk in the live YouTube chat as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your commentary. For Gail from Communities Digital News, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing and the Wrong Real Movie Podcast, Daniel from the Inscriber. This has been episode 255 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.